It wouldn't have mattered if I'd agreed or not. I could tell from the way they spoke they were going to force me anyway.
It's not fruitful, it's against our faith, and it doesn't produce positive results.
As far as young women are concerned, even if they went to university, had great jobs, were very well qualified, they may not be able to fight it, and they may not be able to survive the negatives of having a forced marriage.
I had nowhere to go, no one on my side. I felt trapped.
Forced marriage in Scotland is a widely unreported issue that we wanted to investigate. Even in today's modern society, this violation of basic human rights is still a problem. We went to meet with Sheikh Amr Jamil, a Muslim scholar who works with Unity Family Services. He advocates for the prevention of forced marriage and helped us to understand more about the causes.
Forced marriage is where there's coercion, so that can be physical, it can be emotional, and really the person doesn't have free choice. They've been pushed into doing something against their will, whereas something like arranged marriage is something where parties are brought together, but the final decision is made by the parties themselves, so there's no coercion. Well, the forced marriage unit down in London, they say they roughly deal with about 400 cases a year, and roughly it's the same kind of stats in Scotland, so you're probably dealing with 30 to 40 cases a year. You'll find it across different religious backgrounds, so it's not so much of a religious issue, it's more of a cultural issue. I tackle it through Islamic law, because in terms of culture and in terms of religion, the only thing that will override a cultural norm in the Muslim community is religious authority. So I come from a religious authority background, and kind of say to them, look, yes, culturally this may be the case, but in Islam, the Prophet forbade and was against forced marriage, so we're supposed to be following his example and not what culture says. So it's the only thing that will override it. So when you empower people through telling them what their faith is, it gives them the kind of courage, and it gives them the kind of support they need to kind of tackle cultural norms in the community. I believe in prevention, so I believe if we can prevent this from happening, that's going to give us success, because once it happens it becomes complicated, everyone's saying different things. What you want to do is you want to empower people in the beginning to say no in terms of the younger people, and also you need to educate the parents and the older generation that this is not, it's not fruitful, it's against our faith, and it doesn't produce positive results.
After leaving Amr, we heard Aisha's story about her frightening experience of being forced into marriage.
My family were being nice to me. They wanted to take me on holiday. I was so excited. The colours, the culture, the atmosphere. Started packing my bags and couldn't wait to go. We arrived in a small village where there was no electricity, no running water. It was then that my mother told me that I was to marry a man twice my age. A few years later, a family friend from Pakistan came to stay, and I felt I could confide in him. And with his help, I managed to run away to Manchester. But, as always, things got worse. The police came knocking on my door one day to inform me that they had arrested 3 people with my address in their pockets and weapons in the boot of their car. They said that my brother had paid them £50 each to come and kidnap me. If the police hadn't intervened, I would have ended up dead.
Sadly, Aisha is not alone. We also spoke with Sarah, another victim.
It wouldn't have mattered if I'd agreed or not. I could tell from the way they spoke they were going to force me anyway. My phone was taken away from me, and there was no computer in the house. I couldn't contact anyone. I was terrified, and I didn't know who to ask for help. Luckily, my family didn't know my sister still had her phone, and she called the British police. On the day of our wedding, some men came over to the house. My family must have thought they were just wedding guests, but they were from the UK embassy. They helped me gather my things and took me and my sister back to the embassy. I felt so ashamed. But all the workers understood. They'd seen lots of people in my situation before. When we returned to the UK, everything had changed. Our home was no longer our home anymore. The forced marriage unit helped us get our things and found us somewhere to stay. But even now, things are far from perfect. My parents are desperate to find us and get us married, despite everything that's happened. I worry that I'll bump into a random family member and the entire nightmare will start all over again.
Victims like Aisha and Sarah have been helped by organisations like Shakti Women's Aid in Edinburgh. We spoke to Brazil about the problems of forced marriage.
I think first of all we have to talk about it. And before we talk about it, we have to recognize that it's all our problem. Because one of the problems with the issue of forced marriage is that it has, although it's not, no one officially states it, but it's widely recognized and it's not untrue, that it is a problem that disproportionately affects Black minority ethnic communities. For some women, and we have worked with a number of young people who've grown up in Scotland who can't even speak English very well. So to try and access a mainstream service, whether it's the police or housing or benefits, or even speaking to the school, can be quite problematic. So agencies like ours are the sort of bridge that gap. We are the bridge that link women onto the services that they need. Young women tend to see forced marriage as an event in their lives. But personally, out of all the cases that I have worked on and my colleagues have worked on, we see it as a journey. We see it as a very disempowering experience. It may be presented to these women as an event, but actually the preparation for it starts much, much earlier. There are others who are just as much at risk. It does affect boys and young men. The consequences of having a forced marriage for boys and young men are harsh and painful and devastating, but we find, because of how the world works, that the men who are forced into marriage, a number of them will be able to free themselves of such forced marriages. Let's just say that they live to tell the tale. As far as young women are concerned, even if they went to university, had great jobs, were very well qualified, they may not be able to fight it, and they may not be able to survive the negatives of having a forced marriage.
Stories like Aisha's and Sarah's are shocking, but with the help of Unity and Shakti, things are getting better. It's the responsibility of everyone to speak up and escape the culture of forced marriage.
The word Shakti, although translates as strength, it is a very female energy that cannot be destroyed. And I think that sort of represents all the service users we have, because they may choose never to leave their abusive situation, but they rebel against it. And that requires a lot of strength. And there will be those who will leave and go out and rebuild their lives, and they are also Shakti. And for us who work here, we are also Shakti, and because you are making this movie, you are also Shakti. So, you know, I think that word has a really, really powerful meaning if you study it and experience